Hey, good evening, Indiana. Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I am broadcasting live from Bloomington. So, as you know, in the new year here, I resolved to spend less time editing the podcasts and more time just getting valuable information out here to you. As such, this is the second one of these we've done. We had Jared Stancombe on last week, a former state house candidate and cybersecurity pro. You can catch that one in the archive. Next week, we're going to see labor organizer and My Labor Radio host Mark Gavart on Wednesday night. This coming Sunday, we've got a virtual town hall with 9th District Congressional candidate Brad Meyer. Lots of big stuff going on here at Who's Left and on the larger Progressive Indiana network. So this evening, my guest is Nate Stout. He is running for State House in District 38. He'll be joining us here shortly to tell us all about his campaign, about his district, and what the folks in his area are concerned about. But real quick, before we get to that, our big ask: this is an independent media project. We do not paywall content. We don't sell out to advertisers, and we don't have any billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide valuable information behind a paywall in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in the work we do, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And look, if a paid subscription is not in the cards for you right now, I understand. That's okay. You can still help by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our written work to your people. You get us next time with the subscription. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us. It's just at Who's Left on the other social media sites. Also, please, Progressive Indiana Network is new, and we could really use your follows. Our name there is the full spelled out Progressive Indiana Network on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, where you don't get that many characters, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let us welcome to the show Nate Stout. Nate, welcome.
Thank you so much. How are you?
I am doing fine. You know, Nate, in honor of Nate Stout joining the show tonight, I'm going to enjoy this Guinness Stout while we talk.
Nice. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, like you said, I'm running for House District 38, which is... it's a lot of counties. It's a total of 6, 2 full counties, and it touches 4 others. It's Tipton, Carroll County, all of those counties, Western Howard, Northeastern Clinton, a little bit of Cass County, and a little bit of Tippecanoe. So in my logo, the A is actually the district, and it is, I mean, it's a sight to be seen.
I've seen that. I appreciate some good use of negative space. Whoever designed your logo did a really great job.
Well, their name is Nate too, and I don't know if they're watching, but he did an amazing job. And the fact that it rhymed, I mean, it was just kind of a no-brainer.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, listen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I like to start these off with a section I call easy dubs, right? Not easy wins, the easy W's of journalism, the who, what, when, where. I think we sort of covered the who already. Nate Stout, welcome. Tell us... yeah. Oh, and we also covered a bit of the where. District 38, yep. Large, sounds like your typical Indiana gerrymandered district where they're dividing up certain counties, certain communities. I know you said Western Howard. That's like, oh, okay, they're cutting up the Kokomo area. But the center of your district, is it sort of Tipton? Is that what I'm?
I mean, it literally looks like a shoe. Because Tipton County is kind of over here to the east, and then it moves up in a kind of northwesternly direction. And I would say, you know, just a pin on the map. Where I live is pretty close to the center because I'm on the furthest edge of Howard County to the west, but I'm about north and southwise in the middle of Carroll County. So I'm in a pretty good location, and yeah, so that's the geography.
All right, very good. So, hey, look, who, what, when, where, pretty easy. Nate Stout, District 38, the when this year, 2026, running for the State House. And so let's talk about the more interesting W, I think, which is the why. Like, we're in tough times right now, Nate. I mean, we saw during this redistricting battle in the State House in December, the MAGA folks, President Trump and his supporters were putting pressure on Republican lawmakers who weren't going along with his gerrymandering gambit. Like, if they treat their own that way, like, how are they going to treat Democrats? And now, look, we've got masked thugs roaming the streets. It is a dangerous time in a way to be politically active. So why are you putting yourself out there in front of a campaign now?
Well, if not now, when? And for me, I'll just give you a little bit of my background. I've spent my life in corporate America. I've worked for some big brands. I've been fortunate to travel the country, and really just see, the economy from a high level. And as I come home to Indiana, I started noticing some things. The teacher turnover at my local high school is a big problem. Just general nuts and bolts of a small business or a small community with small businesses. They're just not thriving the way that they were when I was growing up. And you add in all the social stuff, and I'm like, okay, it's time for someone that has the background that I do. Grew up in a Christian family, and still have faith that, and I'm a spiritual person. I also engage in activities like I'm a deer hunter. I'm a golfer. I'm around a lot of people that have feel like their kind of backs are against the wall right now. And when they feel that way, it's scary. But I believe most people are kind. I believe most people are good. And I think that the extremes with the threats and the swatting and all that stuff, at the end of the day, if that's what it comes to, I'm willing to take that risk because it's too important to give in to fear.
So you're a deer hunter, right? You play golf, look good in flannel, like a very conservative coded kind of, like at first glance, people might, think, hey, it's just another Indiana conservative guy. And, I think that buys you a little bit of leeway to be out there, to be a little more bold in what you're saying. You have a certain amount of privilege that comes with those things, right?
Absolutely. And, I've always tried to stay grounded in my rural roots. I have a really good friend who lets me help him, do hay in the summer. And, most of the time I'm relegated to the open cab tractor, but every now and then I get to drive the skid loader, and it grounds me with like hard work because I have been kind of an office guy. But yeah, I want that credibility to do some good besides, keeping my Saturdays busy,
Well, yeah, exactly. So when we talked a little bit about this before we went live, it's you hate to sound like to get too white saviory, right? Like, oh, here, I'm a white man, I'm going to come in and save the day. But also, like, you said, I'm tired of women having to do all the work. I'm tired of people of color having to do all the work. It's up to guys that look like us to spend some of our unearned political capital to in a way, but provide a human shield for vulnerable people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like you said, I can make it past the first couple of lines of defense because I have that common ground, and it really is defensiveness. At some point, we're all going to have to start pulling in the same direction. And so one of the things that I am trying to do is keep my campaign focused on some core issues that aren't hysteria inducing types of subjects like public education funding, pre-K, prioritization, things like that. So I think it'll keep me safe from the things that are really scaring them into kind of behaving this way.
Yeah, exactly. And well, you mentioned like the things that you talk about, and they're not super controversial. These are they're things that generally unite us, and that's kind of where I want to go next is the how. Right? We talked about the W's of journalism, but the more interesting ones are the why and the how. Right? And how are we going to talk to our neighbors, our potential constituents? What are we going to talk about? And your website, really good, concise. Strategists tell folks that they need to have like their three things, right? That the rule of three. That's about most folks can remember and understand, and you conveniently have on your policy section three things. So let's spend the rest of our evening here, the rest of our time talking about those things, and I'm sure other stuff will come up as we go along. But there's a theme to your three things, and the word rural occurs in all of them, and I assume that that's your district. So
it is.
Folks have rural concerns in your district.
Yes, and I'll say I did that website all by myself. Thank you very much. So thank you for the compliment. I feel very proud of that.
Hey, nice job.
Yeah, thanks. But no, public education funding is the first and foremost priority of what I want to talk about, because it affects us all, and it is a foundational issue that I think we just need to reframe what we're talking about. And I'm sure you've heard it. I've heard a lot of it in the last 10 years where people are really calling out, oh, well, they only work, teachers only work 9 months out of the year. Well, let me tell you something. Their job is literally the most important when it comes to the development of future generations. And I also have heard people say, well, why are they performing so poorly? And it's like, well, because they continually to get their funding cut. And I'll give you the example of where I grew up in Tipton. Tipton High School or Tipton School District, we used to have 4 elementary schools. We did some consolidation, so there's just one, school corporation, but you had teachers that would teach for 25, 30 years, all in Tipton. And that level of community it built. Oh, I had your brother in class. I mean,
yep.
That type of rural upbringing is only possible when you have those types of numbers. And to me, it gave me so many advantages because it built my self-confidence. And I think when people realize that, even if your kids aren't in school, everything around you is based off of the success of that generation coming up behind you, right? So reframing it into an investment and pointing out that investment has continually gotten removed. In business, if you got a product line that's struggling, you don't cut the marketing budget, you crank it up. You invest in product development. So when you frame it that way, I think it takes a lot of the emotion out of it. And I think if there's any emotion to have, it's the respect for teachers that choose that life. In my campaign kickoff, I mentioned it. My senior year in high school was when Columbine happened, and we conveniently just kind of don't even talk about that anymore. It's unbelievable to me. So
there's a new fresh horror. It seems like every week on that front. But in terms of the the investment angle, I hadn't heard it framed that way before, and that's an interesting angle, especially when you're talking with conservative leaning folks who they like to talk about education as a business, right, and the government having a monopoly on it, and not viewing it as a public service that we all do. And you mentioned the disinvestment. The Indiana State House, our Republican supermajority here over the last 20 years, they've spent attacking public education for various reasons. Obviously, there's the privatization reason. The charter school lobby really wants to get their hands on some of that public money, and then you've got the private, some of the radical Christian folks that would like to take public money to indoctrinate a generation there. But even if you look at it that way, and folks wanting to have a school choice, right? There's no choice in areas like yours.
No, it's a straight draw. And like I said, Tipton, I followed them, and I need to get updated numbers, but SB1, last session's SB1, over the next 3 years, they were on track to lose like $750,000. What are they going to do? Well, I know what they're going to do is they're going to impose local income taxes on everybody. But again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on that. But yeah, so public education funding is my priority, and framing it in a way that the grass is greenest where it's watered is really important. So. And again, someone told me the other day that I'm MAGA passing. Like, just if you just saw me on the street.
Exactly.
But more importantly, I'm a problem solver. That's what I've been doing. And in government, you get to make up all the rules. So let's start framing things in a data-driven, calm. The last thing I'll say on this is that all of this is an open book test. If we are, moving to the next thing is healthcare, if we rank third worst in the country in maternal mortality rate, guess what? Maybe we should look at the states that don't have that number and see what they're doing differently. Anyway, that's my
100%. Yeah, no, if you look at the states that perform well on education metrics, they have some common themes. And, first of all, they take care of their public schools first. They let teachers, they treat teachers as the professionals they are. They're better paid. You look at the places that are having poor education outcomes. God, we were just talking. I was talking with Katie Rector from Mad Voters last night. We're doing a review of the bills going through the State House, and we were talking about another education privatization bill, right? Something that pro charter, they're trying to get make it easier to sell decommissioned public schools to private interests for pennies on the dollar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Arizona beat Indiana to what they like to call universal school choice, which basically just means vouchers for everybody, subsidized private education for those who can afford it. And it's biting them in the ass, Nate. Like they're having to go back and fix the mess that they made, which they made for ideological reasons, right?
Of course, yeah. They're trying to create a completely separate infrastructure for education where they can control who gets in and what they teach. It's as simple as that. So I'm glad that we have not moved any further in the wrong direction, but it's resonating when I'm talking to people that are, Democrats and Republicans alike. It's a uniting subject to talk about investing in the kids and framing it as truly an investment versus an expense, turning some people's heads. And again, that I'm a business guy, it's math. Most of these problems are math. And anyway.
And if you look at it, like you said, from a completely cynical, black and white numbers, economic situation, we know that investment into early childhood education, investment into public schools pays off down the long run multiple times over. And even short term, like schools, hospitals, we'll talk about healthcare, like you said here in a little bit, institutions like that in communities like Tipton, like Kokomo, like Lafayette, they are economic engines in those small communities. you look at wherever consolidation happens and they close those little schools. Those areas around those schools, they dried up. People don't want to live there. People don't want to have to put their kids on the bus for an hour. And that money that you spend on teachers, Natasha Baker is in the chat. Teacher.
Oh,
she can tell you all about it.
She's the best.
Teachers, janitors, administrators, looking at hospitals, nurses, doctors. If those folks live in the community, and paying those folks, paying your neighbors, taking care of them, that money just gets spent right back into the community. These aren't some billionaires that are hoovering up your money and putting in a Cayman's Island bank account. People like Natasha are going to the grocery store and they're spending that money in the community and propping up, that grocery store then has to hire people. So if people in our communities have money to spend, that's better for our communities holistically, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
So let us turn to healthcare, like you said, and public education was your number one thing, but also rural access to healthcare is your number two thing. And like they're closing up schools, a lot of rural hospitals are under a threat of closing. These big Medicaid cuts that were put through in Trump's one big beautiful bill, right? Those are either closing rural hospitals right now because rural hospitals rely so much on Medicaid funding, or there are dozens of rural hospitals in the state that are saying, if things don't change, we will go out of business.
Yeah. It's a big challenge. And I put rural in there too, because I've, we think of healthcare, we typically think of, our bodies, but I think it's really important, and something that started when I was in school is that we got to start making a concerted effort to talk about mental health in terms of healthcare, because I have a lot of farmers in this district. Farmers have one of the highest suicide rates of any profession. They, they're kind of out on an island in some regard. So I wanted to mention that, but in general, I talked about maternal mortality rates in Indiana and how we need to fix that. And with consolidation, there's also these rules with Medicare I'm learning about. Like, I'll give you a little example of something I would like to accomplish or have similar problem solving sessions. But if someone comes in and is treated at a hospital and they're on Medicare and they come back within 30 days, Medicare will either partially or completely withhold any reimbursement from that first visit. It's a thing that happens. And a mayor in Monticello figured out, well, what if we had someone because IU Health is the one losing the money, right? If they don't get reimbursed from Medicaid or Medicare. She had a volunteer fireman get paid from IU Health, that when they had one of those patients come in, that they got on a rotation. He made sure they had meds. He made sure that they didn't need a ride somewhere. IU Health paid for it. Taxpayers didn't have to spend a dime. And it was a win-win for the community. And, my parents live, 45, close to an hour away. What a peace of mind for the kids of seniors and things like that.
Oh my God, yeah.
That was in Monticello. She lost re-election and the program just kind of died. But real solutions exist to bridge some of these gaps, because naturally, when the population base starts to shrink, so do all those other services near them. But we just got to be creative. We got to bring back, there were some telehealth care cuts as part of the BBB, I believe, as well. So we just need to make that a priority. We all have to deal with health. We all are, my parents are aging. My dad, he wasn't able to make it to my launch party because he's just having trouble getting around. And we're country people. My driveway is about 1/10 of a mile long. Like, that's just, I think we should be able to. Man. I know. Both.
A lot of. I had to shovel my driveway yesterday. We got about a foot down here, Nate, and just hearing 1/10 of a mile driveway, my back hurts for you.
Yeah, yeah, it's a long ways. But yeah, that's in general. I want to bring awareness to the issues that are already happening in terms of care access, and then highlight people across the state. Again, it's an open book test. AARP was a big proponent of this program by using that volunteer fireman. Um, and again, my approach is a little bit different. I'm not going to maybe be the best in the legalese of things, but painting a picture where people can go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Using volunteer firemen for a lot of things is an opportunity. So I just want to make sure we're not just throwing our hands up and saying that these problems are too big to solve, because they'll move on right without us. All these rural districts, if we don't make ourselves known, they'll just keep going. So
Yeah, well, I mean, so much of our healthcare problem in this country is because we do everything's privatized for the most part. We've not learned, like you said, open book test, right? Looking at places that have done well. We're the only major industrialized country in the world that runs our healthcare system this way. Everybody else seems to have figured out universal healthcare for some reason, and we can't. And well, I think we know why. It's lobbyists and it's money and the insurance companies and everybody else. Everybody has their hands in the cookie jar. And I want to say, like, boy, what can we do at a local level when we're fighting against a big a
yeah,
corrupt system? But it sounds like there are little solutions. I mean, yeah, we still need our federal folks to push for Medicare for all, for some universal single payer health care. But at the state level, at the local level, we can do some important things.
yeah. And the other thing about rural people being one, we don't really make a fuss like that. It's we have a pride in always just being like, yeah, we're all right. Everything's fine, but we got to advocate for a base level of care, because otherwise being able to live that rural lifestyle, it's become so expensive. It's a shame, because that's what made me, and I feel like I turned out pretty well. So I kind of want to protect that.
Well, you speak to the rural dynamic of kind of sucking it up, right? And we number one, you shouldn't have to. Like, it's a basic human thing. We should be caring for each other. You shouldn't have to just suck it up. The option to go get some care should be a thing. But you spoke of the loneliness of farming as a profession, and how it's kind of exist in isolation, and as such you get the high suicide rate. I mean, there's overall a male loneliness epidemic in this country, and it's just a broader loneliness epidemic. I think we're all very isolated. It's ironic that we have the entire world at our fingertips and we're further apart than ever before. But also, what we speak to, rural hospitals closing, rural schools closing, the centers of community, the things that bring people together are being taken apart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And since we're talking so much about rural, I want to just make sure I mention, have you had Michelle Higgs on here?
I talk to Michelle Higgs all the time. I've had her on a solo show. God, it's been entirely too long, but her work with the Rural Summit is fantastic.
Yeah.
Michelle actually is going to be a guest on Who's Left this week. Not this week, but next week on the 8th.
Oh,
so look forward to that on that Sunday morning. But I actually just spoke to Michelle this afternoon.
That's too funny. Well, I just wanted to mention her because that's the other thing that, as I'm talking, because my district is it's mostly Republican, obviously, but the approach to say let's unify these other districts, because they're all they're all gerrymandered. Michael Potter's got the duck. The
Yes.
duck territory, but we're all facing similar challenges. Just like this idea, that came out of Monticello. I literally found out about this like a weekend ago, and I've just been like, wow, what a great idea, and it worked. But she's building that kind of momentum. She gave us a really nice presence at the State House back in the beginning of January, and I tell people about that because when people hear you're running as a Democrat, I dealt with it on Saturday. People hear that you're a Democrat, they immediately launch into why and trans this and they're forcing us all to be gay. And I'm like, do you guys hear what you're talking? Do you guys hear yourselves right now? And I do this litmus test. If they believe that there were litter boxes in the school somewhere, anywhere, I ask them to prove it to me. And the amount of flustering that comes is unbelievable. That's a good barrier to tell you whether or not you can gain some traction. But it's important to show them that we're just trying to solve these basic problems. We're coming together. We're not pushing people away because of their religion or their background or where they came from. So that's been really fun to be a part of that, and I appreciate Michelle for leading the charge there.
The Democratic Party used to, for the majority of its existence, be the party of rural economic populism. Mm-hmm. And we got away from that for a variety of reasons. If you go back to the 60s and Nixon and the Southern strategy, and they peeled off a lot of social conservatives by appealing to culture war stuff, like you're getting at with the litter boxes, right? This metaphor has come up with my guests over the last couple weeks repeatedly. It's like they're jingling the keys. The billionaires, the oligarchs, they jingle the culture war keys in front of you while they pick your pocket.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Well, one thing's for sure, so admittedly, other than being I've been a Democratic judge at the polling location. By the way, my local Democratic organizer that got me to volunteer, she's mad because now I'm not going to be able to cover my post at the election this year. But I often talk about fiscal conservatism, or being a fiscal conservative. I label myself a fiscal conservative because I don't believe we should waste public money on anything. And yet, whether it's knowing that, like, during redistricting, they are totally fine sending that thing to the Supreme Court and paying a boatload of lawyers because there's budget to pay those lawyers. We just got to start talking about how we're solution driven. We are also, like, we don't want to waste money. We got to take some of those talking points back, because I can point to several examples where, I'll give you one here in Howard County. So we are going to have to put in another prison or jail, whatever, because 30 years ago we lost an ACLU case to.
Oh man, we have the same problem down here in Monroe County.
Well, and what's hilarious to me, hilarious to me is that then they give the ballpark numbers, and they're ranging 100 to 120 million. You're going to have a $20 million slush fund. Like, let's make sure that this thing is as bare bones as it needs to be. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, let's make sure we're spending money in the right way. So being fiscally conservative is not a Republican thing in Indiana. I want to make that clear.
No, quite the opposite. Frankly, if you look at, like, the IEDC, for example, that is just a big corrupt slush fund, and everybody knows it. I mean, even Republicans know it. If you pay any attention to, like, WIBC and Rob Kendall, there, is a conservative guy, and he rails against the IEDC constantly because it is a waste of taxpayer dollars.
Yep, and I think that's the thing. Rural people you always hear this, because rural people, common sense is everything, right? If you don't have common sense, if some neighbor kid is down and you heard an old timer say that kid don't have no common sense, probably didn't have a bright future ahead of him, but they listen to common sense. We like common sense, and we just have to keep showing them the right examples, because they're giving us plenty, but we have to be strategic, and we have to root it in that we all want the same thing. We all care about our kids. We all care about our families. Like, quit listening to this national hysterical, noise.
Those keys are shiny, Nate. They jingle.
Are.
They make a lot of noise when they jingle. And so, how do you thread that needle? I mean, like you said, it's not a good use of taxpayer dollars to engage in these culture war issues. All it does is fatten up the lawyers' pockets, right? But so, how do you thread that needle with folks? Because a lot of them hold these old-fashioned beliefs. If you look at the LGBTQ issues, maybe folks don't understand that. They grew up a certain way. Well, but like, why are we focusing on that? They're picking our pockets.
Yeah. And again, I have a campaign manager, but from a strategy perspective, I'm kind of running this from my hip. So full disclosure, but I think that I need to lean on my business background, and I do, because business is pretty sanitary in conservatives' minds. Now, I could certainly share stories and show them how ultimately business is, you are trying to maximize profits. Government, you should be trying to maximize satisfaction, like customer satisfaction. This is our money. What are we getting out of it? It's I think just leveling with people that numbers don't lie, and like the example with public education, I have seen the light bulb start to go off when I use that example about marketing a product. It seems whatever, but I think it's they can understand it. And, but I also having being brought up in the church, and I think that that's something we have to talk about too, because, you got to be careful, but it comes up a lot. It comes up about they're Christian, so therefore there's no way that they could be a Democrat. And so I try to root it.
Have you heard this Jesus guy?
I know,
man, he's out there.
Talk about a lib. I mean, he is
right.
But it's it's tricky. But again, I want to try, because again, I like this. I like living in the country. I got deer in my backyard, and I think that certain people have just bought into a different story of what's happening everywhere else. I've been in other places. I was in New York City for a week. I don't know, back in November, and I have a great appreciation of what it's like to be in a place like that. But when I tell people I'm going, they're like, "Is Mom Donnie going to be there?" I'm like, "What do you think it is? I mean, what do you think? People voted for this guy. Like, people like him." So
yeah, you get off the plane, you're greeted with a prayer rug and a copy of the Quran, and
I got a $500 gift card, just for showing up to New York, because he's just giving all the money away. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, so but you speak of your career in business, and one of the things folks think about in business is branding, and the Democratic brand is. In many ways, it could use a reboot in rural areas, especially maybe because we have focused too much on identity politics, and again, rightly so. We need to defend marginalized groups, but we can do that, and we have to talk about the economic stuff too.
Yep, and I think that most people are. I think the average person is exhausted. I think the average person doesn't want to have politics. Like, we grew up in an age where being political was, especially being white, being political was just an option. You didn't have to be, right? Because the system was set up for guys that look like me. But then through school and learning and realizing, oh my God, and then, people ask me, like, when did I became a Democrat? And I was like, well, I made sure I was not held to one party when I was on spring break in was it 03 shock and awe? Yeah, I think 03 was shock and awe, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
I'm in Daytona Beach with a bunch of dudes with a bunch of boxes of beer stacked in the corner, and I'm sitting on the bed and I'm watching us blow up Iraq, and I'm like, what? I don't understand. And you know what's funny is in hindsight, even some of those folks on the right have looked back historically when they were trying to discredit Bush and a lot of those things. Well, that's that whole machine, right? We could go on forever on that, but
what? Yeah, no, I mean, like, what if you look at 2016, the reason Trump and his brand sort of took over the Republican Party was in rebellion against to stuff like Bush and, you know, the foreign wars. I mean, the irony that they're you know, starting foreign wars and threatening foreign wars left and right now. But, you know, again, we always knew we at least always knew he was a liar and a grifter. But you know, that this kind of speaks to talking to folks and their concerns, because for as much as President Trump is full of crap, he gave voice to people's anger that have been left behind by an economy that is rigged by millionaires and billionaires, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know, I would say that the narrative of education has been under attack ever since I remember specifically talking to an uncle of mine, and I don't know whether it was a joke or whether he was serious. I'm probably thinking he was serious now, but even back then they were like, oh, you're going to go to college and get that liberal indoctrination, you know? And I'm like, what? You mean I'm going to go learn about stuff? Like, I don't, there's always been this insecurity, and I love rural people, you know, because I am one, and I don't know. I want to make sure that we're giving them as many chances to understand our side. And you said the Democratic Party. I don't want to get myself into hot water on that either, but I'm gonna
do it,
say
Nate,
something.
do it.
I know.
We live for this.
I know. Everyone get ready to clip. No. I think that we all just need to go back to the foundation of what I felt like it was to be a Democrat, which is everybody's in. Everybody's in. You may not get what you want, but everybody's in. We're under the same tent. I flubbed that line in my kickoff thing on Saturday, but that's what, as simple as we need to make it. We care about you from beginning to end, soup to nuts. We care about you when your family's left you behind. You know, people don't like to talk about it, but family can be pretty nasty, especially towards the end of someone's life. I'm sure we all have a somebody we know, or maybe it happened to us, where there's like, it's ugly. And, you know, we just need to be kinder. Our messaging, we still have to be the welcoming and the understanding and the willing to have the talk, because they, you know, certain people felt, like you said, they felt left behind, and ultimately that they weren't respected. And one thing I want people to know that live in District 38 is that I respect everyone before, you know, by default. That's how I was raised. You know, as a progressive thinker, and obviously as a Democrat, I still do a lot of old fashioned things, you know, and I think that's okay. Right. And I try to, I don't know, brand myself that way, because that's what we have to do. We all have to work together, as cheesy as that is.
No, you're right. Well, and that's the thing, you know, I think about being liberal, you know, small L, is that, it's okay for people to have their conservative beliefs and live that way in their own lives and raise their family to be a certain way. We just don't want those values imposed on everybody. We don't want the state imposing those values on us, which, you know, I thought was kind of a conservative thing. We don't want the state telling us how to live. But
or the federal government coming to a state. That's wild to me too. But, you know.
Yeah. So, well, I guess the unifying thing of what I always thought to be a Democrat, and I'm coming out of the FDR era. That's what I think of as a Democrat, is those New Deal values of taking care of the bottom, making sure that folks at least have a floor, that we can, send our kids to decent schools, that we can afford to live, that, folks have decent housing. And we sort of got away from that. We chased, Republicans in the, Democrats got their asses kicked a couple times there in the 80s and said, okay, well, I can tell which way the wind's blowing. Let's be more like Reagan Republicans. I think they misread things in the grand scheme of things, and backed into an election win in '92 in a three-way race, and just let that way of thinking dominate for the next 30 years. We're still digging our way out of it in many ways, but you said, at the top of the show, what did I say? You could see the economy at a high level from your experience in business. And as such, I think you can see that, we need to take care of the bottom. We need to spread some of the economic wealth around so everybody can live well. And, listen, I think in rural spaces, especially, there is a lot of resentment of elites, resentment of economic elites. Why? We should be speaking to that just the same, should we not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just so much to unpack there, but we're talking about economic development, right? And that's why my third thing is smart economic development, and with a focus on small business, because what it seems like to me, and I get the resentment for the deals that have been done. Tipton, a perfect example. There's a plant right on the edge of 28 and 31. It was a Chrysler plant. It was originally Getrag way back in the day. But it's there for a very, very long time. They have it. They ran. I mean, there's a sewer line from 31, if people know Tipton, from 31 clear into town. I think it's like 7-ish miles. They've invested so much in this building. It's producing zero value right now. I call them whale hunters. In sales, if you're selling solutions, sometimes you can just focus on the big dogs. We call them whale hunters. That's what these Indiana legislators have been in my entire life. They want to hit the home run. They want to cover. They want it to be this huge project. Obviously, if they can get a brand name in there, I'm sure that's even better. But we need economic development driven by business people. We should be talking and having regular conversations with entrepreneurs in these rural districts to figure out, because guess what? Those small businesses are also the building block of how you grow these communities in a responsible way. People don't want to have to drive, they don't want just this Dollar General and maybe a one bar restaurant experience, which is that's what's left in a lot of these places. So anyway, focusing on the small business side of economic development, to me, is where we can be more strategic with the money that we're spending, and the return can be greater. We tie up all this money with these big projects. We give them a 20-year tax abatement. So even if it was full of jobs right out of the gate, we wouldn't even really see the full benefits until 20 plus years. Well, probably most of us will be hopefully retired and, whatever. But does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, yeah, you're talking about like these things, like these massive data center projects, these Googles and the Amazons. They come in here and they build these things that are going to be obsolete probably by the time they're even finished being built, because the technology increases so fast. But also the jobs they create are temporary in a way. Like building the thing is a massive infrastructure project, sure, but once it's built, they don't really employ anybody. And they're not producing any value for the community because they're not paying taxes because of the abatements. There's a bill at the State House. We just talked about this last night. The Republican state legislature are trying to ban a ban on the tax abatements.
Oh, God.
Or if you look at Northwest Indiana, they're trying to lure the Chicago Bears by big tax breaks. Again, listen, I grew up in Northwest Indiana. I'm a Bears fan. It's a bad deal. They do not need tax breaks. These are billionaire families. They can afford to pay for their own stadium. They don't need us to do it for them.
You could probably have a full episode, because you seem like a sports guy. You could do a full episode on just the stadiums built in all these different cities across the country, and who actually paid the bill for them. People would be surprised. It's all the people that live in those cities that probably don't even get to go to the game.
Never pay off. I'll tell you what. You know who did this well, and this pains me to say, but Jerry Jones, Dallas Cowboys, privately financed that stadium down there. Didn't ask taxpayers for money. That's how it's done. Do not like the Dallas Cowboys at all, but that's how it's supposed to go.
Well, and just to kind of put a bow on economic development, I think, again, our timeline, because we're about the same age, I saw the Walmartization of America happen in real time.
Yes.
And whether it's retail, grocery, restaurant, handyman, whatever, like all these types of businesses that used to be HVAC companies, they could be a major employer in a town. And unfortunately, with consolidation and just the nature of e-commerce and everything, all the big money got pulled out. All the ownership and the people that started these companies, those types of incomes aren't in the local tax base anymore because they live somewhere else, right? All that, all that revenue isn't staying in those communities. And I think this is the reason I'm optimistic, is that we have the tools to bring business back to those areas because of the internet, internet's basically ubiquitous now, right? With Starlink and some of these another one of those, like, dang it, but I live in the country, I have Starlink, and it works pretty good. So anyway, but does that make sense? Like the barriers to entry in entrepreneurism are getting lower and lower with technology, but we just have to give them the support to get them off the ground, get some of these small businesses watered, quit trying to go for a 100-acre Google deal, because we don't get anything out of it besides an eyesore.
Yeah.
Higher electric bills.
A massive data center development that in the middle of a cornfield where they started digging and didn't think about the water situation. So now they need to pipe water like miles and miles and miles to satisfy the hungry beast. It's like the big corporations, the Walmarts of the world, like they convinced, I think, a lot of small entrepreneurs that they were on the same side. Well, we're all business buddies here. No, not really. They're playing a whole different game. They're playing hyper capitalism. People look, entrepreneurship, great. Global capitalism, problematic.
Yeah. Well, and it's scary because the private equity and other things, they're getting so good. I read an article a couple of weeks ago about how they figured out that when they do, so I mentioned HVAC companies, as founders retire, they typically sell, and there's not a great way. I'd love to see programs to figure out how does the local community make sure that ownership stays, in a local community. But these private equity firms have figured out when they do make an acquisition to not change the branding, to keep it the same, to not appear as though they are now being run by so they're good. And when you when you get some, legislator, again, these guys are working, they have other full-time jobs. Someone from Google or someone from Amazon brings one of their best, they'll have you giving the farm away before you even known what you've done. And that's what we see as a result. So
I think in the end, it comes down to, especially in rural areas, again, we value things like entrepreneurship, but capitalism, big C capitalism, doesn't serve rural areas well because it demands efficiency. And, living the rural life is a lot of things. but it is not efficient. And that's okay, right? That's the appeal of it.
Right. Well, and it's a, you have to give a certain level of infrastructure for people that because, these towns have been around a long time. I mean, I live near Burlington, Indiana. And if you ever drive through there, go to the Burlington Boathouse or the dock. I call it the Boathouse, but their school gym is in the Burlington school gym is in the second story of this place. Like, we've had all this infrastructure all over everywhere. And yeah, some consolidation was good, probably made sense, but you can't just completely abandon what we've built in the communities that should deserve an opportunity, the chance to live there where their family's from, I think.
100%. So, Nate, we've just got a couple minutes left here before we go. I do want to make sure you get a chance to shamelessly promote yourself. Make sure you ask folks to go to that Act Blue page for sure.
Yes. Fundraising has been one of those things. I'm trying to keep it as organic as possible. And Nate for 38 is the brand that I came up with because it just rhymed. And then that logo that my other buddy Nate created, it was too good. So if you look me up, Nate for 38, that's the easiest way to find me. But Hoosiers to Elect Nate Stout is my website. My link tree is posted multiple places. I started on TikTok, so I'm Nate for 38 over there too. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk, and I really am just looking forward to. I'm ready for the weather to warm up because I want to get out, knocking doors sooner rather than later, and I just want to remind everybody that, especially running in these rural districts, we got to be creative and compassionate, and if we can all frame it up and just as simple as this, that we've both read different stories and we have a lot of data and a lot of facts that are on our side, and we just need to calmly keep having conversations. We cannot cut them off. We can't, people that disagree with us, we got to keep trying. And I know I get people kind of roll their eyes for me, but I just believe everybody's worth the conversation. And trying to come, because at the end of the day, Scott, I recognize my privilege. I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I've had, and I would love to feel comfortable that my children are going to have those same opportunities. But they're entering a pretty crazy world, and so I wanted to step up. And if you feel inspired or with me, I would love to have your support. So thank you for the time, Scott. Appreciate it.
Very good. Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, Nate Stout, thank you for joining us, sir, tonight on the Who's Left podcast. Great job with the shameless promotion. I will pivot to shamelessly promoting myself here for the last minute or so of the show. Be sure to tune in this Sunday morning for Who's Left this week, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and, of course, at the new progressiveindiana.net. It is Indiana's most thorough weekend news and politics talk show, and it is a lot of fun if you can call following the news in this timeline fun. My panel and I look at Indiana news and U.S. and international happenings through a Hoosier lens. I hope to see you there in the comments, but if you can't make it live, it will be available for download later Sunday afternoon. One last reminder to please consider supporting this project with a paid subscription if you are able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on most sites. It is PIN Indiana on Blue Sky and TikTok. Finally, you can find me at Who's Left on most of your social media sites. Send me a DM on any of them with feedback, tips, ideas, concerns. You can email me at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on too. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.